This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Troy, take it away.
And I'll jump right into it. So this is a administrative subdivision proposing three lots. It's one existing lot with a single family house with an accessory garage that dead in on Broad Street. It's at the intersection of Ipswich Road and Broad Street. It currently is R60 zone, so the applicant proposing roughly 6,000 square foot lots. This recently came in for a concept plan. The comments are pretty consistent to what was said at that concept plan. The main thing I think we had from a planning perspective is outside of what you would normally require is the two lots, 2 and 3. We would like to see some proposed architecture just off of the configuration of those lots. They're unique in regards to those footprints, and there's some other design comments that you can see that I think Natasha had provided in regards to just the paving widths and stuff like that, and some recommendations. Also, too, with lot 1, we would like to see the access point come off of Broad Street and instead of the existing access off of Ipswich. So at this point, we can turn it over to the applicant to kind of ask questions based on the comments that you deem important, and we can go from there.
Rich Ingram, CPJ, and we have the applicant who is also on the call, Fred Eisenhart. We just have a few to clear up or clarify here. Area transportation comment, confirm with DOT regarding 4-foot existing sidewalk should be improved to 6 feet on Broad Street. Do we need to go to 6 feet, 4 feet?
I think we would defer to DOT on that aspect of it. I think we just had it in there.
Yeah. This is Billy Whalen. Yes, what you show is fine where you're showing 6 feet and then you connect into that portion that's 4 feet. That's fine, but the material can't be permeable. It has to be concrete.
Yes, we are revising that. That was part of our stormwater comments as well.
Okay.
So just to clarify, all of our frontage is required to be 6 feet and then tie into the existing 4 feet on Broad and Ipswich.
Yes, correct.
And then also with you, I guess, show east, west, and north, south sidewalk ramps at all 4 corners. Those are existing. You just want them showing graphically on the plan. Is that correct?
No, we actually want new ramps to be put in rather than at the corner. So you would have at the west part of Ipswich, there would be ramps basically next to those storm drain inlets, immediately to the right of those inlets. And then there would be an east-west connection on the north side of Broad and the south side of Broad. So going from lot 1 across to that existing house. And then we would also need ramps aligning north-south crossing Ipswich, as those ramps are currently not standard.
And then the second part of that was show standard driveway aprons.
Yes, you're showing curb going up. The curb would end at the
end at the road.
Yeah, at where the driveway hits the gutter, the curb would nose down.
That's all I had. Like I said, Fred's on the call as well, the applicant. Fred, do you have anything to follow up with?
Yeah, in terms of the width of the sidewalk, the one thing that would be wonderful, I think, for the house floor plans and trying to accommodate some of the requests of the other county staff is if we had a little more room in the building envelopes of all the houses. So a 1 foot, either relief on the right-of-way width extension or on the road, the sidewalk with the right-of-way being shifted as well would be very helpful to address some of the staff's concerns with the housing or the houses and the floor plans and the facades. I don't know if that's possible.
You need to provide a written request for a waiver reduction of anything. So it needs to be in writing and explain why.
Okay. Would that waiver request be dealt with at a staff level, or would that have to go to the planning commission?
No, well, it depends. If it's a zoning ordinance waiver, that's one thing. If it's a waiver of right-of-way width, there's 4 reasonings in the county code. And then any other waiver is a design exception.
Okay,
So basically, you're gonna do it at this time before we write our letter, and you'll write it to DOT staff and planning staff, and we'll review it and take a look, provide comment.
okay. I'll talk to Rich about that and make a decision whether we want to do that or not. Other than that, I don't have any further comments.
They are still working on the floor plans, obviously for the lot, so hopefully get those here in the next couple of weeks. They've been working on those and we'll be happy to share those.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, what is the submittal requirements on those?
So the floor plans and architecture is not required. What we were saying is that we would like to see them just because of those odd or not unique footprints that you got for lot 1 and 2, so we could kind of see what that proposed architecture is. So if you have something, I think it helps,
Okay,
because you got a limited build to area. You're locked in with what you're showing. And so I think that's, from our point of view, we wanted to see what that would look like, but.
so
Not-
sounds like you're curious.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's not a problem, but we think we got some good architecture for those.
And I guess I want to follow up one more thing with the right of way width. I think the sidewalk would still be a 6-foot sidewalk. The width part of it is a DOT request, but the state, that doesn't necessarily negate the 6-foot sidewalk. So I don't know if you're.
So the issue we ran into is, right now, the right of ways for both streets are ultimate, but we were having to do additional dedication to get the 6-foot green panel, 6-foot sidewalk, 2-foot maintenance buffer in there. So we were losing, lots or lot size width to get 6, 6, and 2. So we were seeing if there was the possibility of a reduction of, a 1-foot maintenance buffer versus a 2, 5-foot versus 6 for the green panel.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, go ahead.
Yeah, just submit something in writing and explain to us
Okay.
exactly why.
Okay.
And we'll take a look at it.
And you said DOT and
DOT would review that.
Okay. the rest of the comments, the notes and the lotting plan, WSSC, we're working with stormwater management. We're waiting to have this meeting to resubmit to them, but I think we're all on the same page
One thing about WSSC, you need to submit your HPA
now.
before you move forward.
Okay.
Because you need an extension, or
Yes.
so before you move forward and the next step with planning, you need to at least submit the HPA. It doesn't need to be approved, but you need to submit it to a WSSC.
We will get that started this week. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Santo. I'm the chief, of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Glen Allen Lot P10. Your lead reviewer is Erin Fowler, and the purpose of this meeting is to answer any questions based upon the comments that you received. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and Erin will highlight any of the major items we should discuss and then turn it over to the applicant. Go ahead, Erin.
Thanks, Christina. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for bringing this concept plan in for us to review. Just for some context, we are in the Glenmont area here. This is at the intersection of Wallace Avenue and Glen Allen Avenue. And the property is currently improved with one single family home in the R90 zone. And it's directly north of Wheaton Regional Park here. I think at a high level, the main comment I'd flag for discussion today would be the environmental constraints on the site with the stream valley, and then the buffer that would be required to redevelop. I know there are other comments about zoning because one of these lots, the current lot 4 here doesn't have frontage, so there would be some requirements in the code that would need to be met for building restriction lines, and then some comments from DOT and fire and others. But I think probably the environmental constraints are the biggest piece. So I think with that, I can turn it over to the applicant for any questions.
Yes, good morning. This is Mike Rizavi at Rastec. I'm representing the applicant. We prepared the plans. Obviously, there's concerns, which is why we wanted to start off with a concept plan to get some feedback. And yes, I agree that the environmental portion appears to be the major issues that require resolution. My main question about that, though, is that parallel to Glen Allen Avenue, as you can see, a portion of the channel is piped, and a portion obviously on each side of the pipe is not, is open. So my question is this, my first question is this: how is it that a channel that is parallel to Glen Allen Avenue, in this case, would require a stream buffer to begin with? I'm not sure if the channel's man-made or not, but the fact that it's piped tells me that there's a good portion of pipe there. It tells me that there's a, it's not really an open channel. I don't know if it was man-made or not. So I just wanted some explanation on that and see what the flexibility, because that does affect, how we develop this site significantly. So I just wanted to ask about that a little bit.
Sure, this is Hallie. The portion outside of the pipe does need to be buffered, and it is a use class 4 stream, so it needs to have that 125-foot minimum buffer. So once you kind of draw that circle around the portion that's out of the pipe at the corner, and then the portion that's out of the pipe as it flows down, you end up with kind of overlapping bubbles. And I drew a really rough line on the comments just to kind of give you an idea of where that ends up being. So it does end up cutting out most of the property.
Okay. Does that stream, you saw that we showed the stream buffer on the Starling Drive side. Does that 125 feet refer to that also? Because I think we're showing 100 feet now.
Yes. Yeah, it needs to be 125.
Okay. So is there any, because of the circumstance, because of the way this site is set up, where the stream buffer you're referring to parallel to Glen Allen is kind of like a developed area, is there any waivers or anything that one could obtain to develop this efficiently or more efficiently, I would say?
So sorry, this is Amy Lindsay. I'm just helping out here. So there are no waivers from drawing a stream buffer according to the environmental guidelines. However, you could always ask the planning board for relief. I don't think staff would support it, especially given the amount of public investment you might have seen the signs for the stream restoration that was occurring. In fact, you can even see them along the frontage of that property. So public has put a fair amount of investment in stream restoration work here. But you could always ask the planning board for a waiver. As you know, forest conservation law has changed and requires full planting in all stream valley buffers. So you could ask the planning board. Like I said, I don't know that staff would support it though.
Let me just go one step further, and I'm just trying to, because I have to explain this to others. Why is it that the portion that is parallel to Glen Allen Avenue, the other portion I can understand, but why is it the portion parallel to Glen Allen Avenue is even considered a stream that requires buffers, where it's if you look at it in the field, it's it's not really a stream, it's just a channel that's piped on at various points. So I don't really understand why that would be considered a stream.
Because it is a
requiring buffers.
stream.
Okay.
It is a stream, and the development happened after the stream was there, which is why you see it next to the road and not under the road, right? The stream was there first. The development happened afterwards, and at the time the development happened, stream valley buffers were not required. But if you go just adjacent to your property, you can see that very clearly where man has not altered the channel, that it becomes a natural stream channel. And streams are defined by the presence of groundwater involvement, not by what man did around it. So yes, part of it was piped, because at one point in time, that was one way streams were handled, and we do not require buffering of piped streams, but the parts where it is not piped does require a stream valley buffer.
Okay, so next question is, if that's the case, we are saying no. When we say no development in the stream buffer, do we mean no grading or no structure in there, but it could be inside the lot, let's say, for example?
There's no development in the buffer, and you'd have to replant, you'd have to forest the buffer as well.
Okay, no development, okay. But it can be inside a, let's say, future lot?
That's not in the buffer.
It can be inside the future lot if it's not within the LOD.
Okay, all right, that's my question. And how does that affect the existing house structure? If that's not within, if that's also within the 125?
If you don't do anything, it doesn't. But as soon as you want to start doing things, it will, because that 125 feet actually comes through part of the house.
Right, that's the question, okay. Okay, the other question is, Starling Drive, I'm assuming at one time was a paper street because there's a right-of-way associated with that. If, let's say, there was a way to develop the site, would that not be considered a frontage for, let's say, for example, in this case, lot 4, having a frontage on Starling Drive?
Yeah, Mike, this is Matt Folden. That is an interesting question. It's one that we talked about internally. I think letter of the law, it probably would count as a frontage, but because it couldn't be improved for access, just given all the environmental constraints, I'm not sure that it makes sense to count it as a frontage.
Okay.
Did a few years ago that was similar in that, and we said you couldn't use it for fronting.
Yeah. Did you hear what Rebecca said, Mike?
No, could you repeat that, please?
We had a case a few years ago. I can't remember where it was. But it was a similar situation where they couldn't use it really as frontage. And I think that we had said what Matt had said.
Yeah.
So we have a precedent.
The complicating factor is the environmental buffer around the stream in this case. Because I think typically the paper street would count as frontage.
Okay. All right, those were my questions. I'm not sure if the applicant or their architect is online. I try to contact them before the meeting. So if they are, please feel free to ask any questions.
I am. This is Andy from Zero Architects. I'm the architect of this project. Nice to meet you guys. So if I didn't understand wrongly, it means like we need to set back from the pipeline on the Green Island Avenue 125 feet. Also from the Starling Drive side, we need to set back from the stream 125 feet as well. Am I right?
That's correct.
This may be just end up being like we cannot do anything to the site. That's my basic understanding.
That is possible. It is possible that when the neighborhood was initially lotted out, that the reason that lot was left that large was in recognition that
Right.
it had significant streams, but, you know, we don't know exactly where those lines are just until we are able to review a natural resource inventory. And always remember, it's top of bank. It's not the center line of the stream.
Top of bank, gotcha. So, Mike, maybe this we can discuss later, but the next step might be we need to look more detail into those survey documented record and find out the more accurate data. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. We'll talk after the meeting.
Sure. Florence, we don't have any questions to the county now. Do you have anything to mention? Okay, if not, I'm fine. Mike.
Okay, thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll discuss internally and go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Park Lawn Self-Storage. Your lead reviewer is Amy Lindsay. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed, and the purpose of this meeting today is to ask any questions based upon the comments that you received. I'll turn it over to Amy first to highlight any of the major items, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant. Go ahead, Amy.
Good morning. So there are basically two issues that I would like to highlight. The first is we had a number of comments related to the frontage with the pathway and how that integrates, as well as the drive aisle angle, and some thoughts about lead walks and sidewalks leading around the property. So that was sort of one issue. The second issue, and I'm going to defer to Sam Fajardi on this, really has to be the major storm drain you've got running through the property. So Sam, do you want to talk about that a little more?
I think we did discuss this when a zoning map amendment was coming through. I think it was last year, and we provided the comments that was that were important. And I think MHU was aware of it. Dylan, do you have any questions about any of the comments we had back then and provided now?
Dylan, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, all. Yeah, Sam, to your point, yes, we did meet, and I think we addressed all your comments that we had as part of that LMA process. One of the things we did want to mention on this call today is the secondary point of access you requested. That was something that we did talk about initially with Arkland, and they do understand that there is potential for that storm drain to be maintained, and it would impact operations, but they feel adamant and we feel adamant about keeping the single point of access on the site, and understand that if there are storm drain repairs needed, that it would impact operations, but Arkland is fully aware of that and doesn't think there's any need for a secondary point of access to accommodate that.
Yeah, good morning. It's Steve Creighton with Arkland, the applicant, and just to reiterate what Dylan spoke to, we're well aware of the situation and what that could mean. It's a business risk as we see it, and one we're willing to accept. And in these situations, in the uneventful case where something does arise, I think the parties would obviously work together to expedite any repairs, as they always do, in the least impactful way. So thank you.
Yes, this is Atik Panshir from DPS. We would like to have something in writing from the property owner that goes with the land. And so it will be a comfort for us to allow a single point of access to your property. Because we don't want to going back and forth with the property owner in the future.
Atik, is that something that I assume there's going to be an easement that accompanies this? Something to be worked within that document as opposed to separate document?
Same document will be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, well, do you have any questions about the comments you received?
Yeah, so thank you, Amy, and everyone. As everyone knows, this went through LMA, so there's obviously been a significant amount of back and forth with comments to date. So we only actually have a few that we wanted to clarify on today's call. The first, in no particular order, was Amy. I don't know if Amy is on. I can't see everyone that's on. Had a comment. Yeah, it looks like she is. Regarding the cellar space. So Amy, I presume this was just kind of like an FYI in terms of needing to meet the definition and the calculation in the code.
And it's something obviously we've thoroughly vetted and kind of done the calculations for internally and feel confident that that area qualifies as a seller. Just wanted to clarify if there was something in particular you wanted us to resubmit include in our resubmittal to demonstrate that, if it's just like a plan that shows the seller calculations or something more specific.
I think when you apply for building permits, zoning need to see a detailed sketch or something graphically to show how you calculate to define that space as seller, not a basement. All right.
Yeah, so you're just flagging that we'll need to provide that graphic and those calculations to show how it meets the definition, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great, we can do that.
Let me elaborate. So that document that he said, that's something that we're going to do at time of right-of-way permit, customized for this case. Is that something that we're on the same page?
Yeah, in terms of the storm drain and the single point of access. That I assume that needs an easement with it at the time of right-of-way permit.
Yes,
obviously I defer to you all when that timing is for that, but yeah, that's when we would incorporate something within that easement document acknowledging the single point of access.
Right. And the other thing I was going to mention was, probably you're aware of it, but until the storm drain is relocated, constructed, operational, and it's in own easement that's been recorded, we cannot develop the land.
You're saying that the new storm drain has to be in place before any of the other site work can commence?
Yes, it has to be fully constructed and operational, and it's a recorded easement before anything else could happen, and the old easement can be removed.
Yeah, I think the same generally goes for the WCC work. The plan is to have all the utilities relocated, easements granted before the building work would start, which would interrupt the existing service. I think that's what you're saying, Sam, is you can't disrupt the existing until the new is constructed and online, correct?
Yes, has to be, as you said, Pat, has to be constructed and operational and accepted for maintenance, so we could remove the old one.
Yeah, and WCC has the same requirement for the sewer, so that's consistent with our understanding.
Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sam, could you include your language, the language that you want to put in the recommendation to the planning board? So everybody is aware of our requirement.
Sure.
Put it on the letter document that they have to relocate, number one, and also they have a single point of access. With understanding that the business could be disrupted and the county has no obligation to put it back the same way it was before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Anything else on the storm drain?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, totally fine. Thank you. Sam, I think the other one that we had was actually, I think there was a comment regarding the CSX crossing. So we took a look at that. Our understanding of the sector plan was they were specifically looking at a connection across the CSX tracks between Wyconda Road and Nicholson Court, and this actually was provided. There's an easement that on another Arkland project, they provided for that future trail connection for that CSX crossing if it's ever put into place. So don't think that's applicable here, and there's obviously a whole host of challenges why it wouldn't work on this site anyways, but just wanted to clarify that was actually kind of further south in the sector plan area.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we have to work out in cooperation with Park and Planning and DOT, because that's a master plan requirement. I think we could have a meeting on the sides to decide which route we want to take.
Okay, would be great if we could be part of that meeting or follow-up meeting. I think I would just point you to I guess it's map 41 in the sector plan. It specifically shows that crossing in red where I was describing it, where there already is an easement for future trail connection that was granted to the county for that crossing. So I'm not seeing anything in the sector plan that requires it on this property, and certainly wasn't something that came up when we went through the extensive sector plan review at LMA. So happy to get on a follow-up call though to discuss.
We'll take a closer look at it. Thank you.
Yep. Amy, the next comment was yours that we want to just clarify in terms of sidewalks around the buildings. This was something too that we had explored at the time of LMA, in terms of having a continuous sidewalk around the building. It's not feasible just given the topography, but then also isn't necessary just given the type of facility that this is. There, we did provide that direct pedestrian connection from the street to the leasing office. And then beyond that, it's a controlled facility where patrons would be accessing the site, you know, through their vehicles. And then if they're inside the facility, they have obviously access to the interior of the building. If they ever needed to go back to the leasing office, they can use those interior corridors. So I thought we would work that out with the LMA. So I just wanted to circle back to see if there was, we can't do it all the way around the building. But if you had any other further kind of comments on that piece of it.
Okay, I mean, I had seen that a comment was made, but I wasn't part of that conversation. I had just looked at this and I thought, well, let's say I wanted to take things to storage and there wasn't a parking space available in front of the door I wanted to go into. Would I be walking in the drive aisle carrying my stuff around? So I was just looking at that also for, you know, ADA access. If you've got, you don't have ADA spaces in front of each access into the facility, that could be an issue. You know, I would definitely love to see if you've got any sort of exhibit or something, and maybe that was previously provided, and I'm happy to do a little more research on that.
Yeah, I think we can elaborate again when we resubmit and kind of provide more information just in terms of kind of how everyone would get that access. Both, it's a combination of both exterior access, but then that interior access within the building that all the patrons would have access to. So we certainly can provide that and then follow up with any further questions you have.
Great, thank you.
So I think those were the ones we wanted to cover today. Dylan, Pat, Steve, anything I missed?
Nothing on my end. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
Nothing on my end, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Millennium Court Self-Storage. Your lead reviewer is Philip Estes. The purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions based upon the comments you received, and Philip will highlight any of the major items we should discuss and then turn it over to the applicant. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Go ahead, Philip.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'll just summarize some of the main comments and then we can turn it over to the applicant. First off, overall comment from planning is, as we've previously indicated, staff at this time doesn't support the zoning change. And as you know, the subject property and the surrounding area are part of the Germantown sector plan amendment process, and you are exploring with the master plan team rezoning the property through that process. And given that the master plan update is underway, staff will not provide at this time any comments on site design, massing, parking, etc. until that process is complete. Moving on to transportation, staff has provided some detailed frontage improvements, including a site path. In the E-Plans comments, one major comment is where you're showing a cul-de-sac connection. Planning staff prefers a linear vehicular and pedestrian connection there with the private drive. And also just to note, the townhouse development to the north, there is a condition of approval that once the Millennium Court connection is made, that access to Frederick Road from Bolin Manor Drive is to be closed. So further coordination will be needed should this application move forward with SHA, DOT, and planning staff to finalize that to finalize the design connection at Millennium Court. In terms of our environmental comments, the project will need a full NIR, FSD, and forest conservation plan. Fire and rescue has noted that you'll need to provide 15-foot clear and walkable grade around the exterior of the building, and all points of the building greater than 150 feet need fire department access points. There are other technical notes for fire and rescue compliance. And DOT comments concern right-of-way dedication, that the connection of Millennial Court to the private drive should meet the requirements of Chapter 50. And there are comments regarding the WSSC easement termination, storm drain easement, and site distance. Zoning wants to note that the self-storage is categorized as an industrial use, and this requires a 30-foot screening between the self-storage and the townhomes to the north. So that's really the major comments, and I'll just turn it over to the applicant.
Morning, everybody. Erin Gerard on behalf of the applicant. I did just have one point of clarification out of the box, because as we were reading the comments, we understand that staff doesn't support an independent rezoning application based on the current master plan. But you just said staff doesn't support a rezoning. I assume that means a standalone rezoning, because we have a pending request in front of planning staff to reconsider the rezoning as part of the upcoming amendment or in process amendment. So are you telling us?
No, that's correct. You're correct. We don't support a standalone rezoning, but we do support the applicant going through the process with the master plan team.
Okay. And I know there's no time in that. I can't see who's in the room because it's too small of a box, but Patrick, I had gotten an email from him about, that you might be taking us up on a site visit. That's certainly something that we still want to do with the amendment team to kind of, I think this property is so unique, that's worthwhile. And we have gotten supplemental information that we're going to be submitting to you about the gas station and I alluded in our letter about how the county had changed the code to require certain setbacks that were health related. There's actually been more studies since the that amendment occurred that we wanted to share with you. So you can be on the lookout for that, but I'd appreciate, I understand that'll be offline of this process, but if we can be in communication about setting up that site visit and continuing the dialogue about a rezoning through the amendment, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Patrick, I don't know if you can see me, but I'm
No, I
here.
can.
I'm just in the office. Yeah. No, thank you for that. Yeah, we were just commenting some of the statement of justification. There was a lot of background about the rezoning request that was made, and so I think staff was just trying to make sure that we were responding to one, we're not supportive of a rezoning through the current master plan and zoning, et cetera. Everything that we've talked about, they just try to make a simple statement on that. We're not commenting on the use at this time because we're just getting going with the vision. We haven't even come close to like recommending any like land use or zoning recommendations for any of the properties in the plan area.
Right.
And so we don't have enough information to really weigh in on that at this time, but we are very much aware of your request. We'll be reviewing that, considering that as we go through the master plan process. So that's what we're trying to say. We're not really weighing in on the use right now. I was trying to explain to the team, it's very premature. We've got, probably 1,000 properties to analyze and make a recommendation on. We hear your request. We're considering that as we go through the master planning process.
Okay, excellent. I mean, honestly, our
Yeah.
group kind of read the comments differently, so I just wanted to clarify for everybody's sake.
Yeah.
Do you have, I know on the website it says summer, do you have a sense of when you're going to have some preliminary recommendations?
Well, we're just starting the visioning session, so there's going to be a lot of community outreach during the summer about visioning before we get to preliminary recommendations, probably in the fall-ish.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got fall to winter is where we'll hit preliminary recommendations.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't want to take up everybody else's time on that. I just kind of wanted to clarify at the beginning. But one of the things we did want to get out of this session today is, and this is one of the primary reasons, frankly, that we filed the concept plan, is to talk about the connection of Millennium Court. And Kevin Mack is on. We predictably got different opinions in the DRC comments, planning staff wanting it to be more linear. MCDOT had a comment about, going to a standard cul-de-sac. So we'd like to talk about that a little bit. And there's also grade issues that didn't seem to be picked up in some of the comments. So Kevin, wherever you are, if you want to kind of walk everyone through that.
Morning, everyone. Our primary concern on there is with the grades. So, and if you were to go to the second page of the concept, I did a preliminary road profile through there, which creates, in order to connect to the existing private roads to the north, that grade through the cul-de-sac would be over 10% and pretty close to 11% through a cul-de-sac, which the road code, I believe, limits cul-de-sacs to 6%. So that's obviously one primary problem that we need to address, and how to do that. We would definitely be supportive of not having the cul-de-sac and just making it a linear and posting the end of county maintenance. I think it would make the grading easier and a better transition, as well as there's another sheet that has the profile. It's sheet 02 of the concept. But the as you can see, it on the existing condition, it is very steep through there, and to make that connection is vertically is the challenge. Horizontally, it's there we go. So if you zoom in on the profile there, you'll see that at the within the cul-de-sac, the only way to make it connect to the existing driveway is to put in an 11% or 10.6% tangent, somewhere approximately like that, through the cul-de-sac. Makes it very, I know why the 6% is a limit on the cul-de-sac, because when you actually make the turn around it, your cross slope of your vehicle is coming on being kind of dangerous. And we would certainly support doing a linear connection for a variety of reasons. One, it makes the grading easier and the connectivity easier. Less pavement, less stormwater management, more room for forest to the west. And I think it helps our on-site layout a little bit as well. But so that's what we were looking for. The feedback on that was the vertical part was the big question though. If,
So
anyone-
Kevin, can I jump in? This is Deepak with DOT. So what
Mhm.
happens if the connection is not made? Can you still work with the cul-de-sac with the flatter grades? So
Well-
even if it's linear connection without the cul-de-sac, it's going to be the same grades, I guess, because you're trying to connect it both sides of existing, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
even if you go with the linear connection, the grades are going to be the same. I don't see a difference how
Well,
the cul-de-sac would do it.
Only in that if you have a linear connection, then you don't have a vehicle doing a loop turn around.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
If at some point on an 11% cross slope, you're going to have a vehicle that's got an 11% cross slope as it makes the loop.
So you are saying it's going to be 11% cross slope rather than a linear slope, correct?
At the point where a vehicle would make a U-turn through the cul-de-sac.
So, yeah, I
So,
got to look at.
yeah.
I mean, as I said, I didn't look at this portion here.
Yeah.
To me, so if that connection doesn't happen, it's just have a cul-de-sac, because we need a cul-de-sac. That's a core requirement to have a turnaround at the end of the public street. So if the private connection doesn't come in, is it still the same?
Well, we could build a cul-de-sac and keep it divorced from the townhouses to the north, but that's not what the master plan calls for. The master plans is through all of the Mary J. Boland subdivision, north and south. The whole vision is that all of those property accesses off of 355 will be eventually denied, and you go on to Millennial Court and whatever it's called to the south. I can remember what it's called in the south. So that they're not making their connections. And I've worked on 3 other projects in that from the Mary Boland subdivision, where we built the road behind it, and then the access was denied once the connection was made on the local street. So I don't think I don't think that it's an option to not make the connection.
Yeah, that's something we have to discuss internally. I think, Katie, you want to jump in? Katie, is Katie there?
Yeah, hey, so I agree with you. I see the pickle that you're in, which is why we wrote the condition that we did, which is that we need more coordination. We were just, these are the conversations that we were having as well. I don't know if Quasey's also on the call, because, we were thinking perhaps it makes sense to keep them closed and keep them separate, but then at the same time, I mean, it is on the plat. And it sounds like SHA does prefer having access from Germantown Road instead of 355. And so this is where I think we have some conflicting policies, plans, and also, perceptions of what's best practice. And Deepak, not to put you back on the spot, but I know you have concerns about the townhouses making a left onto Germantown Road. So I apologize that I'm just giving you more context at this point, not like a solution. I really, this is why we do concept plans, because I think we just need more time to figure this out. I'm so sorry.
Quasi is on, so.
Yeah,
Quasi.
I'm really just going by what was on the plat. Not sure when that was determined, but at this point, I think I agree that for some more discussion is needed.
Yeah, it's unfortunately when they did the original profile for Millennial Court for the Burger King, they didn't extend the profile north past the Burger King to show the feasibility of the future connections.
Yeah, sorry, Kevin, before we move on, Kwesi, I'm just trying to make sure I understood what you said. So are you saying that you made the comment not because SHA feels it should be, I'm assuming you meant that entrance should be closed on 355, but
Right.
because you saw a note on the plat and that more discussions needed
Yeah,
for
and
you to determine if it should still be closed?
right, because I did not have any discussions internally about that note. It was brought to my attention. Um, so
Okay, can we have that discussion so we can get, because I think that's also kind of a critical piece to all this between what MCDOT and planning would ultimately recommend. And I'm sorry, Aaron, now that I'm hearing that, I'm realizing that you've asked the question and I don't think we're ready to answer it, but I think we need to work on this a little bit more. I'll stop there. So I think we need to continue working this. I think the applicant is fairly asking what would be the expectation regardless of the zoning we end up recommending and regardless of the development they end up putting forward, like what would their transportation expectations be from us? So
Yes.
it sounds like we have some feedback, but we're not quite ready to make a definitive decision. I'll stop here. If there are any other questions, if we need more information from the applicant agencies, please ask them now, and then we can gather this information and continue our discussion. We get back with them. That's kind of how I'm suggesting that we move forward.
I do have a question for Kevin, actually. So is it the connection doesn't happen? I just wanted to make it very more clearer. Basically, the connection doesn't happen from the private street into the cul-de-sac. You're saying that it has still the cross slope is still going to be steep?
If we don't have the connection to the existing townhouses, then it could be graded out to the standard.
Okay.
You'll have a retaining wall at the head of the cul-de-sac.
Okay. Do you know how tall that would be? I mean, you don't have to answer.
Offhand, I'd say somewhere around 6 feet.
All right.
Yeah, we'd have to play with it a little bit. Because I looked at it and the raising the tangent section in front of the Burger King would be problematic also because of the way their entrance is and everything. We would have to, we'd have to go well onto their property and rebuild their parking lot to be able to raise the road at that point, which was the other option I originally looked at. And it's like, I don't see that working very well.
So is there any way you can provide a cross section along the cul-de-sac to understand the thing instead of the, I know you ran a center line profile. Is there any way you can provide us with the cross section along the cul-de-sac?
Sure. Yeah. You mean just straight cross section perpendicular to the center line, or?
Yes, perpendicular to the center line.
Okay.
Just to understand how it works. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it sounds like, I guess we'll send that, Kevin will prepare that. We'll send that to, I guess, Deepak, Katie. And then the thing that's a little weird is we're kind of at the end of this process. So I guess we'll just have to trust that these discussions are going to continue to happen, even though we don't have a pending application anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that's what, sorry,
Go ahead,
Patrick.
Yeah.
We are committed to that because we do not want to leave you hanging. That's the whole point of a concept plan. So we appreciate your patience. Let's keep you guys in the loop. I don't want to give you a promise on a date until I know I have a meeting with folks, but I'll just keep you in the loop. Florence is technically the point of contact. She's out sick today, but between the two of us, we'll get this figured out.
Okay.
And I would point out also that the townhouse subdivision to the north, they dedicated
Yeah.
the north half of the cul-de-sac in anticipation, but no one ever looked at the vertical grade before they came in. And I went through the staff report and the original layouts that they had. They had originally proposed a linear connection themselves,
Interesting.
which was coming in at about 11 or 12% on their original plan.
Huh.
And
I appreciate that additional context. Thank you.
yeah, and they ended up giving half of the right of way for the cul-de-sac, which unfortunately also is for a 60-foot right of way, not a 70-foot right of way. And so a lot of things have changed. So
yeah. And then even further with the master plan, right? So I mean,
right,
we
exactly.
can definitely. What we'd like to do is try to give you some more clarity on what would be needed under this current master plan, and just so that you have some understanding of what this would take, so that you can decide whether you want to move forward. So,
yep.
All right.
And then Christina, can we bring this back maybe 2 to 4 weeks in our whatever the afternoon discussions or whatever the follow-up meetings that we have holds for?
So the follow-up meetings that we have holds for would be next week. But that seems too early.
Yeah.
And then the week after that is DRC, and so then the following one would be the week after that.
Like
So that-
3-ish weeks.
I think 3 is probably going to be what we need to make sure we can get our ducks in a row, honestly.
Okay.
Well, is it an option maybe next week that we just meet with the agencies and then in the following one, we meet with the applicant?
Oh, no, I think that's what we're getting at, Sandra, is that I think we need to do some internal meetings before we can meet back with the applicant 3 weeks from now.
Correct.
Right, and I was just asking if we should use the hold next week to meet with the agencies internally only.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that fully.
So if we have that hold and if we could maybe just do the internal coordination piece next week, or at least get started, I think that would be helpful, Christina.
Okay, I mean, you guys could go ahead and schedule that. You won't need us to schedule it for you.
Yeah, Deepak and Kwesi, I'll follow up with you after this meeting.
Gotcha, okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We
Great.
appreciate you
All right.
guys bringing that. So I think we just had one more quick question, right? Kevin, it was about the storm drain.
Yeah, the storm drain out there is kind of hinky also. There's a 48-inch pipe that comes in off of the SHA right of way and is running parallel to the property on the back of the townhouse lot. It comes to that kind of weird inverted U-shaped retaining wall. And all the storm drains just dead in there in a riprap and then flow onto our property. At which point there is the 54-inch, actually it's two 42-inch pipes that then go down to a connecting transition manhole or structure to end up into the 54-inch that goes under the parking lot of the Burger King. We were proposing to just take all of the stuff off on site out, make a swell connection to pick up the water that's coming from the townhouses, and then at some point pick it up into a pipe and then reroute it around. Because we can't, given the footprint of the building, the existing 54-inch pipe is not something we can get back to across the Burger King's property. And this is just a preliminary concept of connecting point A to point B. We can refine specifically about where the pipe goes as we move forward with the design. And then similar, we have the same issue with the sanitary line. The 12-inch sanitary comes off of 355 on straddling the lot line with the townhouses, gets to the end of the first stick of townhouses and goes diagonally across the property. And between those two utilities, it basically wipes out the whole interior third of the property. So we were proposing to just, reroute those utilities around to clear the usable space on site. So the storm drain goes to the west around, and then the sanitary, I figured that we can make it, as I'm showing there, go around and make the connection. There seems to be plenty of fall for both of them to make it with a vertical. Obviously, we'll need to get permissions from all the utilities and state highway and everyone to do that, but I think it works. Say again?
I think you're just picking up some background, but we there hadn't been really direct comments on that. So we just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that was the plan and see if there were any objections.
So Kevin, this is Deepak again with DOT. So first of all, who the storm drain, the existing storm drain which is running across your property, who maintains that? Because it's picking up SHA runoff, and basically on both sides it is SHA maintained right of way. So that's first thing, who maintains that. And the other thing, we need more information regarding the sizing and how. I know Mark Etheridge's group is online as well, if it's in the floodplain or.
Yeah, there's some floodplain that's ran through there. They piped part of it in the past. It's a 30-acre, it's a county level floodplain. It's determined to be a 30-acre or more drainage area, puts it into the county floodplain. So there'll be some consideration that we have to give on the conveyance for that as well.
Right.
Well, WCC Seaware, this conceptual plan didn't go to us for review. So for that reason, you don't have any comment from us.
Okay.
Looking at right now our records, we have an easement for that seaware that going through the property.
Right.
So if you plan to relocate it, you know that you need first of all, you need to do HPA.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It would have to go through the full HPA and analysis and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly who owns that easement on the 54-inch where it crosses the Burger King, whether that's the county or SHA, but there's no actual easement from the north terminus of the 54-inch pipe to where it to the north property line. So there is a gap of about 50 feet in the conveyance that's just not really clear because there's no channel, there's no easement or anything to connect the dots, as it were. And I believe that pipe predates the McDonald, the Burger King, and I think it actually predates the relocation of Germantown Road. So we would need to do some more research as to who owns what.
Yeah, that's something which we need, as well as we need to know how that pipe is being terminated. You're cutting it off, so how?
Yeah, I didn't get into the detail on that.
Yeah. So
we would terminate it appropriately.
Yeah, so those are things we need to know. I mean, how it's going to be terminated, what it's carrying, and stuff like that. So we need more details to figure that out.
Yeah. Okay.
We have 1 minute left.
Yeah.
And I think that was all of our questions, unless anyone else on our side jumps in.
Yeah.
Very well
timed
timed.
perfectly. Exactly.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Toronto. I'm the chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for 13741 and 13751 Trevilla Road. Your lead reviewer is Mark Beal. The purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions based on the comments you received. Mark will highlight any of the major items we should discuss and then turn it over to the applicant. And this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Hi, Mark.
Good morning, Mark Beal. What we have here is we have a conditional use application that came in a year or two ago, and this is the preliminary plan that was associated with it. We're going to run the preliminary plan and conditional use combined to the planning board at the same time. So we have a townhouse community on Trevilla Road for independent living facility for seniors. And at this point, it's your meeting and whatever questions you may have.
Okay, thanks. I'm Jocelyn with VICA. Pepper and the applicant with me. I think we might have some folks online, but I'll run through what I have. Some of these are very quick, simple questions, and then a couple of things that we want to look at in more detail. Just an odd little one at first. DOT asking for address of properties to be shown on the plans. Is that the existing address?
Yeah,
Okay,
it just makes it easier to help find things.
okay. It's just, it'll be there.
I thought that was always a requirement to add on every plan, like you should provide the addresses.
We do with existing conditions, but not always on the proposed.
Oh.
That's easy enough.
Yeah, if you don't have, obviously, if you don't have addresses signed, yes, you don't have to add them, but if you do have them in general, it would be helpful for us, because when we look at it, we generally pull it up by the address.
Okay.
The property or adjacent property, and so we can look at the project.
Yeah, we definitely have the adjacent ones, but I'll see if there's a lot on those plans. So I'll try to see if I can get it in there. And the internal streets, we're modifying. It sounds like we're all in agreement on what the cross section should be on the private streets. We'll provide the justification for that.
Did you provide road grade plans for those?
No.
Okay, so private streets are supposed to be built to public road standards.
Yep.
And we want you to submit road grade plans with every, I assume it's a preliminary plan?
Correct.
Yes, so with every preliminary plan, those should be submitted. They should be, you're basically meeting the DOT standards. And so somebody should be reviewing them.
You want the vertical profiles.
Yeah, we want to make sure that it works and.
Okay. There's a comment about periodic connections from the parallel parking to the sidewalk. Do we need some kind of like surface stepping stones or something? It's something we haven't done before. And none of our parallel parking is against sidewalks. It's a parking tree panel sidewalk. If that's something that needs to be shown, or if we can work that out at the private road pavement and marking plans.
Was that a comment from Florence?
No, that was from Brenda.
Okay, cool. I was just checking because I don't remember making that one.
Comment. Sorry.
It was,
Yeah, I think I had some questions about the parking, just the layout of it. Again, this is a private road, so that was more like a recommendation.
okay. Right. So we'll make sure that when we go through, we're in agreement with M&C PBC for the private road design, and then we'll get the vertical profiles done.
Yeah, we're gonna have to look at them.
Okay.
But we'd like to train planning staff on them.
The questions from both DOT and M&C PPC on trying to hit target speed, which is 20 miles per hour. These are pretty short roads with parking, driveways, tree panels. We may be able to do a raised crosswalk in a couple spots, but the grading for these roads and the drainage at raised crosswalks is difficult. They become dams. Do we really, I just want to make sure we really think that these stretches of roads are need some kind of traffic calming.
Josh, I don't know if it's necessarily a traffic calming thing, but like we just want the design of the road to reflect a target speed of 20 miles per hour per the complete street design guide. So I think it's like if you're meeting the lane widths and the full cross sections, then I think we're achieving it. But forgive me if that doesn't make sense.
That makes perfect sense, and we're gonna do that. We got a couple adjustments to make, but we'll make sure that that's done.
Okay.
There's a comment about truncations. We don't have a right-of-way to right-of-way condition where we have truncations. It's a public right-of-way to a private road parcel. We certainly are going to meet the site distance triangles for everything. So I don't think truncations is
The only
required.
thing I would say is make sure that your ramps are within the county right of way. Because if they're not within the county right of way and we have to go maintain them, it becomes a problem for us. Yes.
Yes, they are. Okay.
But to your point, Josh, because I hear what you're saying because in the private roads, we don't have right of way to right of way. But I think what we're trying to get at is that sightline thing that you're talking about. So if you could provide that, that'll help us.
Okay. We are reducing everything 25 feet radii. It does get us like 4 feet reduction in the crossing. We have had a couple meetings already with Marie, so we're real close to making sure everything meets Marie's requirements, but as small as possible is our goal. Truck turnings, all of our roads accommodate a fire truck because they're almost all fire access roads. Do you need any other truck run if we can get a fire truck in and around? That was Brenda, that was a comment.
Yeah, we would like to see that you didn't provide anything, so I would like to see the largest trucks that will come through here.
I can run a service truck all around to show you. It gets everything.
Yep.
Skip that for a second. That's related. That's related. One question about a fencing exhibit. I've never done a fencing exhibit. I can show fencing where we think we know it's going to be on the property boundaries because it's part of our screening requirement. Is that internal fencing? That was one mark on yours.
Yeah, that was from our design group. They wanted to see that, if you have your external fencing, internal fencing, is there actually area there? Like if the southernmost units, if you have a fence along the back of those units, if they put them in, where is that in relation to that sidewalk? Like, could you put some landscape buffering in there so you're not just walking by and seeing a big fence, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we made sure that behind all of the private fences, before you get to the property boundary, that there's space. So if they put gates, they can, come around the side to bring mulch or plants into their backyard, do whatever they want. Okay, so the big questions are on Trevilla Road improvements. We're exempt from LATR. We have under 30 trips, even without credit for existing uses. So there are several comments about connections to existing sidewalks. There are no existing sidewalks for almost 2,000 something feet to the east of us on Trevilla Road. There are none to the west of us. So there's nothing to tie into. And bus stops and other improvements seem to be out of scope for our nexus, and no nexus for requirement of those. So we are looking at potential adding a section of sidewalk to the first bus stop to the east of us. So anyone who wants to get on the bus and head towards the shopping center or the rec center has access to that. The bus stop itself is actually, the sign is on private property. There's no right-of-way dedication there. And the sidewalk takes up the entire part of the right of way, then there's a bus stop sign and a utility pole. So even if we wanted to and had unlimited funds, there's no right of way dedication along Travilla Road to allow us to build these things. And if where it's really tight, we'd have to get grading and construction easements, and it's something that we don't think is required and are loath to try to pursue. So
No,
that's
yeah, that sounds fine, Josh. I'm also, I'm filling in for Florence today. She's not feeling well. I suspect that comment might have been, we normally just say, like, if you're putting in a new sidewalk, like, how does it tie into the adjacent? But I see what you're saying. There's not sidewalk out there today. It would help us if you could reference the plats that show that there's not available right of way and that the flag stop is on private property. That'll help us work with you.
And so it's really hard to figure out what's going on each side of you, like where the property lines are, where the road is.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, I was trying to look at it and see if there's, like, obviously there's no sidewalk, but is there a way to get sidewalk there? Like, maybe you pull out the curb. It's an open road section right now and you're closing it and you pull out the curb and maybe you could do sidewalk. But I guess just a little bit more information would be helpful.
Yeah, the other thing that came up in our internal meeting, Josh, was, as you said, there's no sidewalk on either side of this project, but there is some sidewalk across the street. So we were wondering if connection could be made at either intersections, at either side of the road. So we could extend the sidewalk to the first intersection on the east, assuming up is north.
Yes.
And also at the right, at the western part of the site, exactly. So that's how we could at least tie sidewalk. Otherwise, we're gonna have sidewalk along Travilla Road that doesn't connect to anything. It's essentially pointless sidewalk. So if we could just have this connection on either side, that would make the sidewalk a lot more usable by the community.
Is this what, I can't remember the section, is this where they have the really wide shoulders?
No.
Because like when you go from 28 and you make a right onto Trevilla, there's a lot of sidewalk. Are we talking further out?
It's further out. It's past the quarry thing. There are no shoulders. It's very tight. It actually, the property right to the right of us has about 6 feet of grade change and it just comes down to the road. There's not even a swale there on that section. So I know people online can't see what I'm pointing to. Maybe where did you point? So on this section, on the east section, there is dedicated right of way. And I think we can fit a sidewalk in here with a 9 foot off of the paving, just so it's consistent. The bus stop is on the property. This road is a private road. And those both have not dedicated, and the bus stop is actually, the sign is on their property. So we can't do much there. So are you talking about, like,
correct,
down at the rec center, there is a striped pedestrian crossing?
The point is to connect the sidewalks, not to leave them hanging on one side. So one connection there at that intersection that the arrow is there, Mark is pointing, and the other one on the road on the left side. I cannot see the name of the road.
So this one on this side, Nadia Manor,
right there, yeah.
that one's more problematic because there are acceleration and deceleration lanes. So that seems kind
But
of.
there's sidewalk cross there, so there's a way.
There's sidewalk, but if you have a crossing there, you're crossing in against a through lane and a deceleration lane.
That's something probably we can show. We could see if there's any modification we need to make this happening. But it's a lot better than not having anything, just end the sidewalk on that side.
Okay. I certainly understand the point.
I also think we may have a little bit of concern about just striping a crosswalk across without a traffic control of any kind, but I want to make sure I touch base with MCDOT before I give that as like a clear direction, Josh.
Right, and then we start, that's when I get worried because of the expense and the fact that we don't, I think are required to do it under subregs, but we will, we'll explore these. We just want to explore them very quickly and not get
Yeah.
hung up.
No, we feel the same way.
We did get some architecture and things, so I'm going to respond to those other design comments. We do have model units. To shift a sidewalk and do some other things. That we have room with for. Those are the big things. It's really, what do we do on Travilla Road? So we're gonna look at a couple things. We have survey a decent way across the street because we had to look at storm drain and things on that side. So I'll see what I can get that's more detailed and try to set something up probably early next week to run through if we can. Some ideas, because we would definitely want to get back in by the 23rd, I think is our deadline. We want a real clean set. Environment, the FCP, we didn't have, the comments were straightforward and we'll knock them out. Cool.
One building.
Oh, yeah, the building on the top right, we're right up against a stormwater easement and a PUE. So we are going to proffer high visibility units and sides for those things, because I only have like 3 feet before I hit a setback and I can't meet the setback requirement.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
I'm Christina Sorrento. I'm the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division. This is a DRC meeting for St. Croix Distilling, and your lead reviewer is Grace Bogdan. The purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions based upon the comments you received. Grace will highlight any of the major items we should discuss and then turn it over to you. And this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Go ahead, Grace.
So we know this is the site plan and the subdivision waiver, and this is for what should be like a very simple thing. And I think our comments are mostly about cleaning this up and making sure that it's understood as a simple, straightforward thing. There's a couple clarifications that are necessary on like the site plan data table. And I think there's some notes on the subdivision waiver that need more clarification and addition to the statement of justifications for each one. I know that Karem from WSSC sent an email this morning stating that the HPA is still necessary. So that's like one additional follow-up for this. And then for the subdivision waiver itself, we had a couple comments about the truncation and the right-of-way dedication. Understanding it might not be achievable in this scenario, I think it's something that it's an exercise that we need to go through just so we can say what the existing right-of-way is, what the master plan is, and what is possible here. So those are just some overall comments. I'm happy to go through any detailed ones that you have.
Thanks everybody for being here. Why don't we quickly introduce ourselves? I'm Chris Rulin with the law firm of Lord Trillian Brewer.
Jeff Harner, I'm with St. Croix Distilling.
And Patrick Horgan with Huskin Horgan Engineering.
And we're part of the team that's representing St. Croix in in these two applications, the site plan and the subdivision waiver. Just so people have context, this is a proposed adaptive reuse of a historic building for property at 6950 Carroll Avenue and 7110 Willow Avenue. And the purpose would be it's a existing bank building, but would be converted into a distillery and a tasting room. The adaptive reuse project really is pretty simple. It proposes a limited amount of new construction. It's a building addition on the rear, rooftop screening, some fenestration alterations and other items. It's actually already been evaluated by the Historic Preservation Commission, and a historic area work permit for this was actually received on May 10th, 2023. Since that time, the applicant's been processing the permit applications, and in the course of doing so, this particular provision in the Tacoma Park East Silver Spring Commercial Revitalization Overlay Zone became a subject of focus. That provision talks about site plan approval for expansions of buildings by 1,000 square feet or less if the building was existing at the time of the sectional map amendment implementing that overlay zone and did not conform to the standards of the overlay zone. In this case, the building is slightly taller. In connection with that site plan, there's a forest conservation exemption that's been submitted and a subdivision waiver application. The purpose of that subdivision waiver application is really just to be able to proceed to record plat without processing a preliminary plan. And the reasons for that have to do with, again, this is an existing 100-year-old or so building on a historic setting. And we're trying to just implement this very limited project in order to move forward with the approved historic area work permit. So we do appreciate the, Grace sort of comments that the idea here is that this is a really limited project. We're trying to keep it as simple and straightforward as we can. And if we can keep things on the nature of cleanup, we're happy to do that. And that's kind of what we took away from the comments too. But we do have a couple of questions about them. And so we'll get into that with you.
Yeah, so hello everyone. Yeah, thank you for the time this morning and the ability to ask these questions. I think I only have maybe 5 kind of technical questions that I wanted to run through. I'll just go ahead and dive into that. That's okay with everyone. So the first comment, it was number 28 on the site plan. I believe it's from Pepco, and they're asking us to show existing and proposed 10-foot utility easements. So the question kind of there is, our survey and record research didn't show any existing 10-foot PUEs on either frontage. And so we're trying to get clarity if we are being requested to provide those along both frontages. One issue we have along Carroll Avenue that we'll kind of get into with the dedication a little bit is the building itself is only about 8.3 feet from the actual property line. So a PUE there would be more difficult. Willow Avenue, there is room. We in response to one of the comments where you might propose a street tree, but that might be within the PUE as well, so there's a little bit of conflict there, but is a 10-foot PUE being requested as part of this site plan or subdivision waiver?
No.
Pepco doesn't do that. Generally, when you subdivide property, we ask, if you're not a zero lot line, then we ask you to provide a 10-foot wide PUE for the utilities. So that is a standard comment that we asked for. The only time that we've really waived it is either for a rustic roadway or where a zero lot line is. So in this case, if there's an existing building in the way that, you know, obviously you can't move the building. So you should provide some kind of PUE.
Is it your bloodline?
No,
It's not?
I don't think so.
So the building itself is about 8.4, but then there's an existing improvements kind of as part of the historic building. So there's stairs that go right up to the lot line, and then there's the ADA ramp and some planter boxes that, you know, so that there's improvements from 0 to 8 feet.
It's the zoning. So what's the zoning of the property?
NR, they don't.
They don't.
require that.
They're not required to have a setback? Okay. And
Yeah, but this area is NR.
so there's a zero lot line setback. So then they're not required PUE.
Yeah, but I think Patrick said Pepco requested. That's
Well,
something
their
you-
comment was to show existing and proposed, and so I just wanted clarity that we weren't being asked to propose one.
Pepco actually provided comment?
Yes.
Yeah. Generally speaking, a zero lot line setback, we don't ask you to provide a PUE.
Okay, so then that was no. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, there's something new. Who was it from Pepco?
Okay, next question was WSSC. Is Kareem or anyone from WSSC? Oh, hi. So there's one very long comment with kind of multiple comments into it. So the one I'm looking at is 29B. It says no structures or utilities are permitted in the WSSC right of way unless specifically approved by WSSC. And the only, so water's reuse, sewers reuse, there's no storm. The only new connection is electric, and it's a new duct bank with, I think, 4 conduits in it instead of 2, and it's being placed right on top of the existing, so they're kind of replacing it right on top. It comes off a power pole in Carroll Avenue. There's a water main directly under that power pole, so it's, I guess the question is, for that new electric connection, are we being asked to submit like to relocations, the right of way relocations? There's no grading, but I wasn't sure.
So it depends. So if the connection is crossing the easement, you don't need.
Okay,
This is going parallel.
it's crossing.
It's crossing.
Yeah.
And it's not, like, it will be only the conduit.
Yes.
It's not a structure or anything. Only the conduit, you don't need anything.
Okay.
And you are not changing any grading or anything like that.
I'm gonna say the same. Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you. And then we did get a comment for an for an HPA this morning. So initially we assumed one wasn't required because we're reusing water and sewer, but
And you are changing the use.
okay.
And yeah, and another thing is maybe we will need an intergovernmental coordination with DC Water.
Oh, because the sanitary goes to DC.
DC.
Okay, so I submitted HPAs before, you know, the relatively straightforward, I think, especially if we're reusing.
It's very simple, I think,
Okay.
to make sure that we are okay with the capacity because it's in the end of our service area. So that is the problem too. If you are in the end. So usually in the end of our service area, we have problem with lower pressure. And in this case, we have.
Okay.
We're going to DC Water.
And I guess where would I contact people? Who would I coordinate with if we do need that DC water combination review, or would WSSC coordinate that on the HPA?
That during the HPA, we have a person in WCC that handle our we have a MOU with DC Water, so this is a person that is in charge of that. That person will coordinate with the project manager that will review this project, and they will say, like, oh, this part you need to go to DC Water. we will handle it, depending.
Okay, so we'll get more concrete direction after the submission.
Yeah, after the submission.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We got comments saying the existing ADA ramp appears to be non-compliant. And then kind of, I won't read the whole paragraph, but at the end it says, be aware that a 3 foot wide ADA minimum is required for adequate clearance. So I did do some measurements. The ramp is more than 3 feet. It's actually more than 4 feet at all points. So I didn't know if the thought was maybe that it wasn't wide enough, or if I was just wanting clarity on what, and the slope also is well below the 1 to 12. So I just was wondering if there's specific direction on what part of it's not ADA compliant, or maybe if they're just asking us to add dimensions to the plan.
Sure. I'm Carlos Pesmin. I'm the transportation planner for Down County. I provide that comment. I think what you need to submit, at least on your plan, is some more specificity on that corner pinch point by the curb ramp. There are no measurements there, so we really could not tell if at least it met that clearance for 3 feet. There is also an electric pole and a few other obstructions there that could limit accessibility as well. But we see that it's way up beyond the property line. What we are obviously concerned is just the, I guess, like the actual pathway for accessibility and the pedestrian path as well. So we just want to make sure that it's consistently 3 feet from that point of access to the other point of exit for the curb cut.
Yeah, I mean, we could, yeah, okay, we can definitely add information or even add an exhibit. Maybe that zooms in on it, provides some more information. Okay.
What we've seen on some other plans before is just like the line of like the 3 feet showing like the ADA accessible path.
Yeah.
Okay, like literally like the width drawn. Okay.
And I would suggest also reaching out to Quasi, I believe his last name is Woodruff. Thank you.
He's on.
Oh, he's on?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Hey, Quasi.
Hey, everybody.
So we chatted a little bit, and we just want to make sure that, being that there is, Carroll Avenue is also an SHA road, that there's active communication in the right of way as well, because the master plan right of way is 70 feet. But I think that's a comment that that has been flagged before too. So we can discuss a little later.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Yeah, I think I just have one more quick question before I get into the truncation and the dedication. Final one, there was a comment about adding loading zone requirements. We didn't add those. I did look it up, but my understanding is under 15,000 square feet once not required. So I just want to confirm, you guys are just looking for that information to comply. So, okay, I wanted to make sure there wasn't like, we need to apply a loading zone or something, because that was going to get tough. Okay. Yeah, okay. Now the fun stuff. Okay, so now I'm kind of moving to the 2 comments on the subdivision waiver. I think you mentioned it based in the intro, the truncation. So I did look into that. I understand 25 feet from each corner is required. So we kind of drew that out a little bit. Where's my sketch here? So 25 feet would go through the corner of the building, which would not, I would assume not be feasible. We looked at a couple other things. So if we reduce the truncation to the absolute minimum necessary to keep the building out of the right of way, that's going to be like 18 or 19 feet in each direction. And then it'll kind of go right at the corner of the building. That would leave like the ramp and the planter boxes and some of those existing features in the right of way. So if you wanted to completely eliminate those existing features, you'd have to go all the way down to like a 5-foot truncation. So I guess the question is, do we maybe ask for a request for no truncation or a limited truncation? What would kind of be the preference, from the county and SHA on that?
I'm looking a bit to you guys, even though it's not roadway, but we usually work with DOT to determine what's appropriate. We're supportive of the reduced truncation. We understand there's an existing building, it's an existing urban area. The sightlines are well established, but it's something that we have to, go through the motions when we're doing the subdivision waiver request. So if you're reducing it down to 5, I don't think that we want the improvements in the right of way. So whatever's
Depends on what they need, what they are. It depends on what they are.
Are you referring to these? Is this like a retaining wall?
Yeah, there's a ramp, there's a retaining wall on one side, and then there's like an existing planter box that also has 2 small retaining walls.
All your improvements look like they are proposed based on the line weight.
Okay.
Like, to me, looks like you're proposing all of this, so everything should be like, and then the street, it looks like you're repaving the whole street, cause it's a different color. So, we need to see what you're proposing, and the existing can be lighter and the proposed should be darker. So if you can provide that to us, because we were looking at the curb and we were like, why is the curb like this, where it has like a little peninsula out? I mean, you could. So we want the sidewalk to be in right of way if possible. We don't want a retaining wall. We don't want private improvements in the right of way. And so what you should do is provide the maximum truncation you can with including those things, including like the trees, the sidewalk, the ramps in the right of way.
Okay.
That ramp is existing.
Yeah, so sure, certainly we can lower the
Yeah,
line weight
so-
on that. But everything existing along the frontages, that we're talking about right now, the only proposed stuff is the addition in the back and then reconfiguring the parking lot in the rear.
I mean, the second piece of that is to the extent that it's existing, it's part of the environmental setting for historic preservation purposes.
So ramps are not part of that problem. So you need to meet ADA requirements for that, and that ramp does not meet ADA requirements. I assume there's a sidewalk going there's a crossing one way. You have one ramp for a crossing in 2 different directions, correct?
You want the one on the corner towards the road?
Yeah.
So that's existing.
Yes, and that is there a crossing across is there 2 crossings? So you're crossing one street and then you're crossing it. So there is, yeah. So is there a sidewalk on the other side of the street?
Yes. Yes, there is.
So you should be fixing those ramps and making them so that people, like if a blind person were to come to that ramp, they would be sending it into the intersection and not crossing perpendicular to the streets.
So you may want to coordinate with City of Tacoma Park and state because it's their jurisdiction. So they may have better comments on this.
Right.
The roadway.
Yes, for the roadway.
Okay.
They didn't comment on this because usually don't they?
I don't think it's too different enough. But it is.
Yeah.
Receiving parallel to.
So the ramp should really be like you're walking straight into, not your, kind of weird how it is. It's angled, but
Yeah.
it depends on how old it is. And like I said, it's Tacoma Park. So talk to them about it.
Yeah, I mean, if it was down road, would have required a line ramps on either side, but it's really their call.
The city rebuilt those at some point during COVID. Yeah.
So it's pretty new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they might not ask for it. But again, going back to the sidewalk should be in some kind of right of way, just so that people have access to it.
Yeah, so along
Again.
Carroll Avenue, and maybe it'll help when we clarify what's existing proposed, the majority of the sidewalk is in
Okay.
the right of way. The property line starts at what the front of the stairs are. You can see stoop kind of in the middle there, so that's the property
Yeah.
line. So the majority of that, the street trees, that's all right away currently.
Yeah, and so you just want that in the right of way. That's what we don't want. Nobody wants those private improvements in the right of way. That's right. Okay.
So yeah, the reduced truncation just needs to be outlined in the resubmission.
Thank you. All right, so that kind of goes into my last question, which is about the dedication. So there's a comment made on the subdivision waiver, basically just saying what the master plan is and how much needs to be dedicated. So on Will Avenue, we are proposing, and I think there was a comment to clarify this a little bit, but we are proposing 5 feet along Willow, which would get us to the master plan right away with. Along Carroll Avenue, we're not, kind of exactly what we're talking about here. So all those improvements are existing. And the property line right now goes right to the front of those stairs. As we mentioned before, the building's like 8.4. So any dedication will put those existing stairs in the right of way, and then, just however close you go to that building, the more things you're adding within the right of way. So I guess maybe just looking for direction on that dedication is something where we, I guess, in the waiver request to not provide it, or is it a reduced dedication or something with a licensing agreement or something?
So I'm sorry, for Carroll Avenue, what did you say is the master plan and what's existing?
So 170 and it's currently 50, so they want 10 feet.
I think that do you need to explain why you can't provide the 10 additional?
Okay.
SHA's on the line and we can see if they want that perhaps in like an easement form, but I don't think that they would.
Want the improvements, right? And we did outline that a little bit in the statement of justification. Okay, maybe we just need to expand that a little bit. Okay. All right, but we coordinate with SHA and the city on that, or just SHA?
SHA and us.
Okay. Okay, that was the last question I had about, the technical comments, so I don't know. You guys have anything else for us, or Chris, Jeff, you guys have anything?
Anything else?
Okay.
I have one thing, so there's a lot of recommendations about trees in the master plan. But also the zoning code, section 629. Mandate that you need to provide 25% green canopy in the parking lot, so.
25% canopy of the parking lot?
Yeah. So maybe you can move this from water or the open, area in between the parking lots and then provide some trees over there.
10-year, okay, 10-year canopy, I'm assuming.
Yeah, 25.
25, 25% of the 25-year canopy.
Correct. 20, sorry, you were right, yeah.
And you can emphasize what changes you already are making to the parking lot. I think you are adding some green space there.
Yeah, we're actually removing almost 2,000 square feet of impervious area in the rear. And then, yeah, we have a green space near the new painted handicap in the corner there, along the perimeter, of what was, I guess, planned north and west, and then a little bit of green space off the new addition there as well.
Might want to make sure that you, like, if you have a curb there next to that handicap space, that you don't have like a steep drop off, like you have some kind of shelf. And then you go down, like give a 2-foot shelf or something like that, so that people aren't stepping into or don't feel like they're gonna fall into a hole or something like that, so.
You don't know where the gutter would be?
Yeah, so like if you, well, no, you have like a curb there, I assume, next to the handicap.
Yeah.
And then, so in that area, you should provide like a 2-foot shelf for somebody to step onto when they get out of their car.
Like elevated to the elevation of the curb, or?
Yeah, something like that. So you're not like, if the curb's here and you got a height here, it just doesn't go straight down and you're stepping into a hole.
So just make
2 feet
the
deep,
top of the
not
curb
2
feet
feet.
wide.
Yeah, not vertical,
Yeah.
horizontal.
Yeah.
Got it, just like a flat shelf.
Yeah, we can show you what not, the Wegmans in Germantown is what not to do.
That's a start.
Yeah, they get curbs with nothing. Yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah, I missed the parking lot area one. Okay. And we're not exempt from that for being under a certain number of spaces. It's just anyone, okay.
That's a master plan recommendation, right?
So master plan, but also, the zoning code, yeah.
It's in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah. Section 629C2.
And you're coordinating with the city for stormwater?
Yes. Yeah, we got concept approval, based on just reducing impervious area.
Yes, that would be really helpful.
So based on your acceptance date, you have a planning board date of July 17th.
Oh, great. Okay.
backtracking from there, your first resubmission would be due April 23rd. And your final submission due May 13th. With agency letters due June 2nd. We can be flexible if this doesn't require an additional final submission. We can adjust that planning board date.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.